I'm Ariana Grande.
Hi, I'm Cynthia Erivo.
And you're listening to the Broadway Podcast Network.
Visit bpn.fm to discover more.
Hey, it's Erich Bergen. Welcome to The Theater Podcast with Alan Seals.
Hey everyone, you found your way to another all-new episode of The Theater Podcast with Alan Seals. That's me, I'm your host, Alan Seals, and our guest for this episode is Erich Bergen, who from childhood performances of We Are the World in his parents' living room to starring on Broadway and working with Clint Eastwood, he has always been obsessed with how the show gets made. In this episode, we go deep into the mindset of someone who never saw another path, someone whose childhood Lego builds were less about fantasy and more about replicating real-world logistics. He opens up about his early fame, recovering from a devastating professional setback, and how even a cancer diagnosis reshaped his career trajectory. Of course, we get into his hilarious role in Boop the Musical, where he's finally achieving his goal of originating a role, and he is loving every single second of it. Go see Boop, by the way. I think it's one of this season's best shows. I think it's just so much fun. It got a couple Tony nominations the other day. Make sure to follow this podcast on social media. I'm pretty much everywhere. Look for the video version of this episode on Patreon and on Spotify. And now, everyone, please enjoy this episode with Erich Bergen.
Here you go. 1, 2, 3.
Today we're joined by a versatile actor, producer, and director whose career spans Broadway television and film, and on the Broadway stage he starred as Dr. Palmater in Waitress and Billy Flynn in Chicago, maybe best known on screen for his role as Blake Morin in Madam Secretary and for portraying Bob Gaudio in both the stage and film versions of Jersey Boys. Behind the scenes, he's produced major events for Clive Davis, God's Love We Deliver, and the ACLU, and so many more. He is the executive producer of the NBC tribute Joan Rivers, a Dead Funny All-Star tribute, and can now be seen again on the Broadway stage as Raymond in Boop the Musical. Erich Bergen, welcome to the Theater Podcast.
That was a fantastic intro. I also love that you said Jersey Boys and Chicago in the respective accents of those places.
How is there any other way to say them?
This is what I've been saying my whole career. I'm very glad to have finally found someone who thinks the same way that I do.
Chicago, Jersey Boys. We need a Bastin the musical.
Right, sure.
So we can go. It'll be called Park the Car, the musical.
That seems right? No. The worst is the Pittsburgh accent, and I can say that because one half of my family is all from Pittsburgh.
Which half? The lower half or the bottom half?
The
top half, bottom
half. That tells you how early it is this morning.
That tells you how bad my humor is.
Thought for a second. Yeah, the Pittsburgh accent is the worst one. So no Pittsburgh musicals.
What is a Pittsburgh accent? I actually don't know.
I can't even attempt to. I will not give you the dissatisfaction of my not being able to do just about any accent, but especially not the Pittsburgh one.
Can you do a fun Australian accent?
Nope.
Can you do, what's your, if you were to be Boop, give me your Boop accent. Give me your Jasmine Amy Rogers impression.
I couldn't dare. She has this ability to get that like she gets this, I don't know where in the mask it's placed, but she has an unbelievable talent of boopifying herself at any given notice. I'm not convinced that she's not actually Betty Boop.
Maybe this is so meta. This is like the actual Smash Bombshell crossover here, right?
That's right.
Where
you don't realize how much she is that person. I mean, she says she's not, but that stuff pops out of her just. I don't think she went to training for this. That stuff just comes out of her body. She went
to black and white cartoon 1920s training
That's
school.
Right. Whatever academy that is on 38th Street. I'm sure she went there.
It's all on 38th Street. And if you want 1910s, that's way lower.
Way lower.
But okay, you are where are you from?
Born and raised here in New York City, right in Manhattan in Chelsea.
Oh, okay. So the half of your family that's from Pittsburgh is not your immediate half, or is it like distant relative half?
It's my dad and my dad's family. They're all from Pittsburgh.
Okay. And then, so what brought the fam to New York? And you said you were born and raised in what part of New York?
In Chelsea. My parents met. My mom is from Connecticut, and family is kind of all over New England, Connecticut, Massachusetts, that area. She went out to LA for a little bit. She came back, and my parents met in something called EST.
EST?
You're EST. You're too young for it. It's now, I think it's kind of morphed into what's called Landmark Forum or Landmark or something like that. It's very. Are you Googling this as we talk about it?
I'm Googling your age. I'm older than you.
Are you really?
I'm 44, dude.
Wow, that is good work.
Thank you, toss.
Yeah, no, I'm 39. So my parents, I was born in 85. Est was like this, as I understand it, it was like this new agey, like, not self-help, but whatever the positive version of that is. It was very like coming into yourself, I don't, transformative. It was just very of that time. And they met
sounds like they did a lot of ayahuasca.
Well, I don't know if it crossed over into that far, but it is. I think it's a little bit of the same people that would now go to Burning Man. Like, I think it falls into that category.
Right.
But they met in that. And I think they were doing that at the same time as they were at this thing called the Actors Institute here in New York, which is where they ended up getting married. And they were both in the arts, loved the arts. My dad never had a professional acting career, but he did have a cabaret act at the Duplex when it was over across the street.
That place has been around forever.
He opened with Everybody Says Don't, and then went into Barry Manilow's Even Now. And my mom saw the act. I don't know if that put her off for my dad or it was, early on in the relationship, but somehow it led to me. And I have done both of those songs in my club acts. So, it carries through.
You were destined to be a performer. There was no way out of it.
I had no choice. I mean, my parents didn't force me into it in any means, but
right.
I have no skills except for the one that I'm currently doing this evening. I have no skills. I'm not kidding. I have no skills.
Well, obviously you can act, you can produce and executive direct beyond just being on stage and being funny. You're 6'3", by the way, which I just discovered when I was Googling your age.
Yeah, but Google also says that Google has my wrong parents. Google also says that I am one of the richest actors in the world, which I'm not.
Wait, why did you Google that? Am I rich? Is that what you're? Is that what you're Googling?
Times are tough. These are things you Google occasionally. No, I get my dad. The reason why I know this is because my parents have a Google alert set to my name.
Sure.
Just to find out if I've been, arrested at any given notice.
That's how they keep up with you. That's smart.
Totally.
Yeah.
And my dad forwarded me this, one of those, like AI bot articles that says, my net worth is $53 million, whatever, maybe. And he was like, we need to talk. I said, maybe with one more TV show I'll get there, but I'm just shy of that.
You're just 53 million shy of that 53
just
million.
53 million shy of having $53 million. So I don't know how we got here, but I grew up here in the city. Parents loved the arts. Dad was a performer, auditioned for shows. Mom was an art director, and she actually was art directing at Playgirl in the 70s, and then went into kind of the fashion world in New York in the 80s. So I had parents who were very into it all and still are. And I was very lucky enough to grow up in a household with a lot of music, and music was on in the house 24/7. My dad was very much into doo-wop and the music of the 50s, the 60s. Funny enough, Frankie Valli and the Four Seasons, one of his favorite groups.
Mm-hmm.
Mom was very much Joni Mitchell, James Taylor, the music of Laurel Canyon, people like that. And And we had this incredible vinyl collection, which I have luckily inherited and is in the other room. And music was always around, and art was always around. And I think they noticed early on in my life that I was not. I loved Mr. Rogers and I loved Sesame Street, but somehow I came across MTV and VH1. I don't know how that showed up in my world, but I became obsessed with it and I became fixated on it. And the first kind of memory I have regarding anything creative was the music video for We Are the World.
Really?
And, with all the different artists. And I started to get this talent for, and I was 4 years old, and I got this talent for imitating all of the artists that are in that song and then performing this at my parents' dinner parties growing up, much to the dismay of their guests. But at 4 years old, I remember, trying to figure out Bob Dylan's voice. We are the world, we are the truth. I remember doing that at 3 years old and going in between Bruce and Willie Nelson and all those things and doing the whole song. I knew what I saw. I remember there was a video of Michael Jackson performing, and the video was shot in concert, Michael in concert. And in one song, they had clearly shot the video over the course of several performances because he was wearing a different outfit throughout the song.
Sure.
One line he'd be wearing this jacket, another line he'd be wearing another jacket. It was edited. I didn't know from editing. So when I would imitate it at home in front of everyone, I would be changing costumes mid-line, and I had to keep changing jackets at the exact spot I thought he was changing jackets in the video.
Wow.
So I was a full imitator. I was always trying to recreate what I saw. I remember when Michael Jackson did the Super Bowl, and I was so amazed at how, not just his performance, but how did they get the stage on the field in 6 minutes? How did they build all those things? And I started to recreate it with my Playmobil set. And then taking a video camera and filming it. I was obsessed with how the show gets made. I didn't even see myself. It's not that I was obsessed with being on stage. It's not that I was obsessed with singing. I didn't have that kind of story that people tell on like American Idol or something where they say like from an early age, I just knew I had to use my voice. I didn't have that. I just knew that the show was important. And the show had to get done, and I wanted to make it, and I wanted to share it. And I thought this was what everyone did. I thought that everyone did this in their spare time. I thought that everyone was a performer and loved this. I didn't understand why anyone would do anything else.
But aren't kids always that, though, until they're taught otherwise or until they taught they need to be otherwise? And especially you growing up in a family where your parents modeled that actually for you as their careers, how would you know any different?
Well, yeah, they didn't model it as their careers so much. That's what was interesting, is that I didn't grow up in a house with people who were doing this professionally as their trade. I did it. I was growing up in a house with people who loved it and surrounded me with it because they loved to enjoy it, and they did dabble in it, and they were creative in their own ways. But neither one of them were, professional performers or producers or anything like that. It's just that I think I was obsessive very early on. I think everyone will tell you I'm still just as obsessive, if not more. And
you still play with your toys in your dressing room. That's
all the
a rumor
time.
I've heard. Yeah,
all the time.
Yeah,
I mean, I do. Not kidding around. When I see a Lego set or
same.
a Playmobil thing, I've never been interested in the fantasy stuff. I was never interested in like dragons or pirates or anything like that. I was interested in the airport set, the hospital set, the office, the real world things, because that was what I was trying to figure out how to. I think I have control issues. I think the therapy session has taught me.
I can relate on so many levels.
Yes, I know you have a podcast.
Yes, but about the control and the need to build with Legos specifically.
Yes.
I was making with golden books. Do you remember the old books with the golden, they had the special golden spine?
No, what are those?
If you Google golden book, you're too young for this. If you Google golden books, you'll know what I'm talking about. It's like this particular brand that the spine was always had this little pretty strip of just gold wrap on the edge. So the spine, when you always could group them together. Anyway, I would make roads all throughout my house. I would build roads with the golden book specifically as the road, and then take blocks and make those the buildings. And then I would just like make cars. But when it came to Legos, I'd start building the automobile. It was mechanics that I was attracted to.
Right. I was obsessed with Brio, which was the wooden train stuff. And I was always so upset that they didn't make one. You know, everything was about like, it was always like a train, a fantasy train in the woods somewhere. And I wanted Brio, but the New York City subway system. I wanted it to be real and recreating what I was experiencing in life. I don't know what that is. I don't know why I was so and still am not interested in fantasy. I don't. It's never been appealing to me.
I don't know either, but it's interesting you said that, because when I think of like Game of Thrones, I watched it because it was a well-written show, not because I loved the fantasy of it.
Right.
But I love anything sci-fi, like especially aliens and time travel. But I don't like dragons.
Right. Yeah. For me, I'm obsessed with Severance.
Yes.
You couldn't pay me to watch House of Dragons. You couldn't pay me to watch Star Trek, that type of thing. It's just not where now, by the way, if there's a casting director watching this, I am available for both of those spin-offs. However, I love fantasy when I'm in it. I don't, that's just not where my brain goes. I don't know what that is, but it's interesting how those things that we, as kids, like kind of stay with us. Like we're always kind of the same, what we become obsessed with early on.
Well, how did that translate then as you got older into acting and singing and dancing, moving, whatever that is? Because it sounds like from an early age you would be a filmmaker.
There's very little dancing, but I thank you for suggesting. I always wanted to put on the show. At first, it was about becoming an actor and becoming a performer and being up front. That was just my natural way into it. But I think the way that I am now as a producer and a director, I was always prepping for it. Like the work that I do now directly relates back to when I was in math class in elementary school, and instead of doing math, I was writing dream set lists for, Whitney Houston concerts. And thinking, no, this song should go before that one. This song has that fade out. It would be better if that song became, before that one. That's what I was doing when I was 10. And that's exactly what I do now. And I still, so clearly that has, I was prepping for it. I was training for it without knowing that I was training for it. But producing really came later in my life and career. That was, I was an actor. I've been an actor for this whole time until, accidentally I became a producer.
Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after this break. Welcome back to the episode. At what point, going through high school and then did you do college? At what point are you starting to take this seriously as a career? Or did you ever think otherwise that you wouldn't? But like, when did it hit when you're like, oh, I can do this. I can make a living from it.
Yeah. Well, make a living. When I was 10 years old, I got discovered at an after-school theater program. It actually was when I was 9. It was a youth talent manager who she approached my parents after seeing me in this after-school theater program and said, I'd really like to sign your son. And they said, no, we're not doing this. And the next year she came back and she said, how about now? And I was 10 years old and they said, we'll take a meeting. We sat down and she signed me and I started to work as an actor. It was a lot of like voiceover auditions. I was the kid who for a long time was like, all parts sold separately. Like that was my thing. I would do fruit roll up Fruit by the Foot. I just remembering my like early auditions.
Probably like heard you so many
You
times
probably
as a
did.
kid. Yeah.
You probably did. There was Nickelodeon. I did a Nickelodeon Big Help thing for a while. I went into an audition for an audiobook for, I think it was Goosebumps, the R.L. Stein's Goosebumps.
Mm-hmm.
And this audiobook, the producer of it, his name is Lawrence Axsmith. Funny enough, I had dinner with him last night. He was just in visiting from Toronto. He was working at the time as a producer at Simon & Schuster, and he called my manager and said, look, he's not right for this project, but I happen to be writing a musical that is we're premiering at my off-Broadway youth theater company, which is called New York Youth Theater. The musical was called The Sick Boy, and it was loosely based on the story of Ryan White. And I came and auditioned for that, and I got the part as the kind of the lead kid in this show, playing the neighbor of the Ryan White-esque character. And we did it, and I did this musical off Broadway around Halloween 1996, and that was really the start of my, professional career. The summer prior, I had really discovered theater. I wouldn't even have known theater was a thing, except for my mom brought me to my first Broadway show, which was Big, the musical. And it was life-changing because there were kids my age in the show performing and singing and dancing. So I saw that it was actually approachable. It was something I could do. It wasn't just something on MTV. And then that summer, my parents sent me to Stage Door Manor. I was at Stage Door for 7 years of my life, and that's, was kind of my major training ground. So I was spending summers at Stage Door, and then I was working professionally the rest of the year. And then when I was 17 years old, I went to North Carolina School of the Arts for college. I dropped out after my second year because I got a job in the Los Angeles company of White Christmas, which was directed by Walter Bobby and Brian Darcy James and an incredible cast of performers, Ruth Williamson, David Ogden Stiers. And I did that. And then the next summer, which would have been the year before I graduated, had I stayed in school, that next summer I was cast in the first national tour of Jersey Boys. And that was right after the show won the Best Musical Tony. And then, it's been nonstop from there.
Well, how did that convert into the film version and working with Clint Eastwood? I mean, that's just incredible.
Well, yeah, so I did the tour. I opened the tour. I did the first year of the tour, or the first year and a month of the tour. We started in San Francisco, and we sat down in San Francisco for like 6 months. We moved to LA. We did the Amundsen. And you have to realize at the time, Jersey Boys was like Hamilton, right? It was just the biggest show in the world.
Yeah,
every last star was coming to the show. It was just a wild experience. I was 20 years old playing Bob Gaudio, and I was out on the road with Devin May as Tommy DeVito, Michael Ingersoll, and Christopher Colley Jones, and it was wild. I mean, I remember waking up the day after opening night in San Francisco and walking out of my corporate housing, and there was a newsstand right outside, and on the cover of all the newspaper was the picture of the four of us from opening night the night prior. It was a wild experience to be shot out of a cannon like that. And then at the end of 2007, they called and they asked me to open the Las Vegas company. So 3 months later, I moved to Las Vegas. I did the show in Vegas for 2 years. I did it with Jeremy Kushner and Rick Fogno. And it was just an incredible cast of people. Devin May actually ended up joining. It was incredible. Vegas was a wild experience to be headlining a show in Las Vegas for 2 years. And then I was let go from the production, which is the professional way of saying fired.
Yes.
And then that happened at the end of 2009. And then a week after being let go, I was in New York, kind of in a very dark place. And truly a week later, I went into an audition for Gossip Girl while I was in the city, kind of trying to figure out my next move. And I went to the audition for Gossip Girl. I was set to go back to Las Vegas the next day to clean out my house. And I didn't hear anything from Gossip Girl. And so I got on the plane and I flew to Vegas. And the minute we touched down, this was before Wi-Fi on planes, as ubiquitous as it is now. The minute the plane touched down in Vegas and I turned on my phone, there were 83 calls from my agent saying, you have a callback tomorrow for Gossip Girl.
Oh, shit.
And so I went to the house in Vegas, cleaned out my stuff, and went right back to the airport and flew back and, took the red eye. And the next morning walked into the callback for Gossip Girl, and I got it. And that's kind of what started my TV career. And after that, I moved to LA, was there for years. And I was doing, what happened? Oh, that's what it was. I was about to leave for the national tour of Anything Goes. This was in 2012, the fall of 2012. I was about to leave to go do the national tour of the Roundabout production of Anything Goes. Rachel York was our Reno Sweeney. And an audition came in for the movie of Gossip Girl. And at that time, it was being directed by Jon Favreau, and it was at Sony. And I went into the audition here in New York. I did it, got a call a week later. Well, I guess we tried to follow up and say, anything happening? He's about to leave on tour, anything happening? And they said, yeah, it's not going forward. He's not right for the role. And I remember feeling like, you mean the role that I've played for 3 years, I'm not right for? And, what are you going to say? What are you going to do? So I didn't get it. I went on tour, did the tour of Anything Goes for about 5 months. I found out while I was on the road that that version of the film got put into turnaround and did not happen. And
what's turnaround mean?
Right after what'd you say?
What's turnaround mean?
Turnaround usually means it's not happening. We're turning this car around. We are not going to make this. We are undoing this process. That's what I believe it means.
Sounds about right.
I don't know why they don't just say canceled. Someone smarter than me will be able to explain that, but they're not your guest today. You're stuck with me to poorly explain things. So at the end of the Anything Goes tour, the week after I got home, I was living in Los Angeles, and this is in March, late February, early March. I was diagnosed with testicular cancer the week after I got off the road. And I went through surgery and chemo, and my first audition back was they had announced that they were doing the movie of Jersey Boys again, and now Clint Eastwood was directing. I ended up with an audition again. I went in. There was only a casting associate and a video camera in the room. No one else, nothing else. I did the scenes, did the song, and left. And I didn't hear anything. I flew to New York 2 weeks later, something like that, to do the first week-long workshop of the stage musical of An American in Paris. And I was playing the role that Max von Essen eventually played on Broadway so brilliantly. And on the final, I think it was the second to final day of that week-long workshop, I got a call in the late afternoon that said, you got the part of Bob Gaudio in the Jersey Boys movie. No callback, no nothing.
That was it.
That was it. And of course, I'm ecstatic, but they're like, you cannot tell anyone. It's very important that you don't tell anyone. I had an audition later that evening, like after the workshop was over. I had an audition for a regional production of Miss Saigon to play Chris. And I think it was at Arena. I forget what theater it was for. I was petrified of this audition because I can't really sing like that. That was never my kind of thing. But, I was doing what I could. And auditions terrify me. So the reason why I was ecstatic for two reasons. One, to have the job, but I was really ecstatic because this means I didn't have to go to my Miss Saigon audition. And that was really, really exciting to me. And I said to my agents, oh my God, I don't have to do this. And they said, well, here's the problem. It's 4:00. Your audition's at 5:30. Everyone's in the room already. you can't say, we can't tell them why you're not coming, and we don't even know if we can get in touch with them because they're all in the room already. So just go, look, the movie could fall through. You don't know, right? It's already been put into turnaround once. Just go. And they said, look, the pressure's off. You don't even have to think, just go have fun. I'm sure you'll have like the greatest audition ever. And I remember I was like, oh, you're right. Not thinking about it and not being in that frame of mind, this is going to be like the easiest, most wonderful audition, because I don't care.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, watch, I'm going to end up getting it. When I tell you that it was one of the worst auditions of my life.
Not what I was expecting you to say.
Oh, no, I was so bad that I remember the director laughing mid-song when I was singing Why God, Why? And I remember thinking, no, literally, why God, why? It was very bad. So I was very, very happy that the movie went through.
I was not expecting it. I was expecting, and I nailed it. It was the best audition ever because I didn't care, and I had to choose between the movie and this regional production.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, no, that didn't happen.
Not so much.
Wow. Well, that's incredible. Then, how was it hard for you to go from the stage version to the movie version, or did they just say like it's still just as big? Because like TV film typically is more contained, not as big. Typically,
no,
right?
I think that what made it great was that Clint and the producers had decided to hire a lot of people who had done the show. All throughout the cast of Jersey Boys are people. The film, there are people who played Bob Gaudio in other productions of Jersey Boys that he hired and put them in different roles. Like the movie is filled with actors who did the show in one production or another. So that was really great. Tommy DeVito being played by Vincent Piazza was very helpful because he was such a great TV and film actor that we kind of jumped on to his spirit and style. The other thing was he did not use the original movie script that was written by John Logan. He brought back in Rick Ellis and Marshall Brickman to adapt their stage script for film. And that made it easier, at least for me, because I was saying words that were similar to me. But I'm always a believer that, great acting or good acting or acting is being aware of your surroundings. And I think it's about communication.
Sure.
So if you're on stage and you have to reach 1,500 people and you have a large theater, you need to communicate to the back row. When you're doing a TV show or film and the camera's right there, you just need to communicate to there. So I think that we just found ourselves naturally adapting by being aware of the space and being aware of each other. And Clint's a phenomenal director. So he trusted us to get the work done, and we did. And we came in, I think we even came in like ahead of schedule, like a day ahead of schedule or something like that. We had 2 days to film the what's known as the sit down scene, which is the big scene in Act 2 of the musical where Gyp DeCarlos, played by Christopher Walken in the film, kind of figures out what we're going to do about all the money that Tommy has gambled away. And he had set 2 days to film this scene in the movie, and we got it done in one afternoon because so many of us had done that exact scene.
You've rehearsed it for years already.
Right.
Yeah, that's crazy. And then did all of this start leading to, with Gossip Girl and the movie and everything, did that lead to more TV and film auditions, or were you still doing a lot of theater auditions? Or was it?
A mixture of both. Living in LA at that time, it was still the old version of pilot season, and I was doing Desperate Housewives and Person of Interest, Franklin and Bash. I did a bunch of guest spots on various TV shows. And, I had great experiences. Jason Alexander, who had given me my first job in LA when I moved out there, I did a funny thing happened on the way to the Forum at Reprise, which was LA's version of Encores. That's not around anymore, but Jason was the artistic director. And it was my very first audition when I moved to LA. It was like my first week, and he gave me that part. And then later on, he was directing an episode of Franklin and Bash, and I auditioned, and he cast me in that. So, it was very much like it felt very you talk about who you know. It's not about who you know. It's just, hopefully, some people who are also working. I mean, you count on your friends and people that appreciate what you do. And I had a great time doing all those shows. But right as we were beginning to launch the promo tour for the Jersey Boys movie at the beginning of 2014, I got an audition for this. It was pilot season, and this script came into my email box called Madam Secretary, and it was being cast by a man named Mark Sachs. And I had known Mark Sachs since I was 15 years old because he was also Stage Door Manor alumni, and he had continually come up to camp to look for new talent. And his best friend was my mentor, my teacher at camp, Michael Larson. So we were all, very connected, and I was always auditioning for Mark, and I counted Mark as a friend. Mark felt when he read the script that there was one person to play this part, and that was me. So he made sure that I got the script as quickly as I could, and I auditioned.
Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after this break. Welcome back to the episode.
When I went into the audition room, I was asked stories about working with Clint Eastwood because they knew that I had just done the movie and that it was about to come out. And they asked me, how was it working with him and all that stuff. And I told this story about this scene that I had to film in Jersey Boys where I had to drive a car. But being born and raised in New York City, I didn't learn to drive a car until I moved to Las Vegas and I was 22 years old, which is a bit later than most people learn to drive.
Sure.
What I really didn't know how to drive at all, and still don't to this very day, is a stick shift. And I had to do that in Jersey Boys because it was those old cars. Mm-hmm. And Clint is a really calm guy. He really is. And he's incredible. But the one thing that gets on his nerves is when things like cars don't work. And I kept stalling out the car as I had to pull into the scene. It was me and John Lloyd Young in the car, and I was driving. And it didn't work, and it didn't work. And on the third try, it didn't work. And in my rear view mirror, no joke, I see Clint Eastwood walking up the hill, coming to the car. And I just remember saying to John Lloyd, going, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit. And he comes up to the car. And he goes,
you don't want Clint Eastwood mad at you.
Exactly. And he comes up to the car. He comes up to the side of the car, and I'm, sweating bullets at this point. And he's like, what's wrong? Why isn't it working? And I was just like, it was horrifying. And I told this story at my Madam Secretary audition, and I got the part. So I'm convinced to this day it had nothing to do with my performance as Blake Moran. It was my impression of Clint Eastwood not liking me.
What did he do? I want to hear more Clint impersonation here. What else did he say?
He was my favorite is that he would sometimes not yell. He didn't really yell action or cut because he had always said that he had started working when he was working as an actor and starting out. He started in Westerns, and you didn't want to shout things because you didn't want to scare the horses. So he would say things like, all right, go ahead. And you would just start the scene. And when the scene was over, he would yell like, all right. But he would only say it to the crew. He wouldn't really say it to the actors. So there was one time we filmed the scene, and he encouraged improv and playing around with it and just seeing where the scene went. And we were doing one scene, I forget what scene it was, but we were doing it and we were continuing the scene. And in my head, I know the script part of this scene has ended.
Sure.
We're now kind of playing. And I looked over and I realized the crew had stopped filming a while ago. And we were still acting. He's such a gentle guy that calmness on set is why you're able to get so much work done so quickly, and why he works so much as a director. He just pops these movies out. But it was he was very calm and very serene until that one day when the car didn't work, and then I thought, oh, this is really now Dirty Harry has showed up. He was magical, wonderful
Do you
man.
Feel like driving a stick shift?
Exactly. The answer is no. I really don't.
That's I want to hear you do Clint doing Batman.
That's I'm Batman.
Yeah, there you go.
Oh, look, now I have to call out tonight.
Yeah, I'm Betty Boop.
Where's
listen.
Betty Boop?
Hey. All right. So, Madam Secretary, you're on this long running show.
Yeah.
I want to fast, like, everyone knows about Madam Secretary. Great.
Everyone
I want to
knows.
talk about Boop. Boop
Yes.
is now one of my new favorite shows.
Oh, I'm so glad.
Saw it the other night, and again, like going in, like, what is this about? I didn't see any of the out of towns. I try very purposely not to read about a show before I see it because I want to go in and just experience it in real time for the first time.
Yeah.
And again, Jasmine's performance, your performance, every single person in that cast brought it.
Yeah.
And the script, it's such a fun show. So, like, for you personally, for Eric, when you were like, oh, they're making a Boop musical, what was your first reaction to hearing about this IP being developed?
That's the dumbest idea I've ever heard in my entire life.
Yeah.
That's what I thought. when I had heard, for years, I think for like 20-something years, I think even at one point Jason Robert Brown was set to write it. I remember seeing that on one of the theater websites a million years ago. I was aware that it was a show that somebody was trying to do something with. And then when I heard David Foster was writing it, and I knew David, I had worked with David, I knew him, personally and professionally, I thought, David Foster is writing a Betty Boop musical? Like, those two things do not go hand in hand. So I was very turned off to the idea. And I love David Foster, and I get Betty Boop. It was the two things together that didn't make sense for me. And then when Jerry Mitchell was attached, I thought, oh, now I kind of see what's happening. Now I kind of see what this is going to be, because the Jerry Mitchell style, once that umbrella was put on it, I understood what this show was going to be. And then when I heard Susan Birkenhead is writing the lyrics, legend, fantastic. And then Bob Martin writing the book, I thought, okay, now this is something that could be interesting. If they nail this, this is going to be great, because all four of those people are perfect. And I went to see a workshop of it in, a few years ago. Jasmine wasn't in it yet. And Andy Carl was playing Raymond Demarest. And I thought it was great. I thought it was fun. I could see that they had work to do. At that point, I think it was called Betty Boop's Day Off. And but I could see what it was becoming. And about a year later, I got a call saying, would you be interested in replacing Andy Carl? Andy's going to go do something else that he's been wanting to do. And I said, sure. I was up more for I hadn't originated a role yet. Even Jersey Boys doing the tour, Danny Reichert had played that role first. In Waitress, I was the fourth person to play Dr. Pomander, I think. And in Chicago, I was the 204th person to play Billy Flynn.
Estimated, yes.
So
yes.
I was excited about the idea of originating a role. And that's what made me want to do this. And then I absolutely fell in love with the show. And I fell in love with its message. I fell in love with the song, the score. I fell in love with the script. I fell in love with doing it. I fell in love with watching this audience every single night and how they react to this kind of old-fashioned, I don't mean that negatively, but it felt like we were doing 42nd Street. And now what I'm addicted to is really watching this audience every single day react to this show. I've never seen such a diverse audience. You have people coming who are there to just have a great time and have a night out. And then at the matinees, you get kids, all these kids who are lined up outside the theater waiting for autographs afterwards, all holding their stuffed Pudgy dolls, Betty's dog. It's incredible. I mean, it really is something that I did not see coming. I had no interest in doing, and thank God I said yes, because it was it's meant so much to me.
Do you like playing that type of the Raymond trope of character where he's just like this full of himself, sort of moron? Like he doesn't realize, they don't realize that they're completely stupid and closed-minded, but just go through life just being like, all right, I'm gonna go do these things, and these things are all completely ridiculous.
Well, what's scary to me is that I never played those characters before, but as I get older, more and more of those characters I don't have to audition for. They're just offered to me. It's a little horrifying. I was playing Bob Gaudio, and then Blake, the nice trusty assistant on Madam Secretary, and then I was playing Dr. Pomander, the sweet, male romantic gynecologist lead and waitress. And then all of a sudden, I got Billy Flynn in Chicago, the lead in Dial M for Murder, the one who did it, and Raymond Demarest, the corrupt mayoral candidate in Boop. So I don't know where this is going next, but I don't know how I feel quite yet. I as long as it's in a comedy, I'm fine with it.
Well, you can ultimately, in Boop specifically too, you're getting laughs just by plain physicalities, right? Because your character is just so ridiculously dumb, like running on a platform of sanitation. Right. What's the slogan? You can do it.
Let's do this.
Let's do this. Yes.
Yeah. Well, there are some big laughs in this show. I credit them all to Bob Martin. My theory is say the words in the right order, and that's how you'll get the laugh. He has done that work for me. I am happy to step into the role of not messing up his words and kind of nailing the laugh as much as I can. That's how I feel about it. Even the physicality stuff that I do, it all comes from what's on the page. And they allowed me to do it. Jerry and Bob and everyone allowed me to kind of push this as much as I could. And you have to walk, I have to walk a line in the show of being the bad guy, but having to be likable enough to get laughs. If they hate me, then even if I had the best joke in the world, they won't laugh.
Right.
So I have to ride that line. And we talked about it in the rehearsal process. There were things that I said, let's not go there because I think I'll lose them. I remember I did something in Chicago one night, and I tried to play with something, and Walter Bobby came to see it, and he gave me one note, and he said, that's an expensive laugh. That's costing you something later on. And he said, you got the laugh, and that's great, but you paid the ultimate price for it later on in Act 2. And I don't want to go into all the details. I don't want to kind of, I don't want to go into that because it was kind of, it's a very special thing for me and my version of that role. But that line stayed with me. That's an expensive laugh. And when I went to work on the show, I thought about that because it's a very fine line I have to walk.
And a lot of it too is just, like you said, trusting the words from the script.
Yeah.
Because Bob wrote a script for your character that is very carefully treading that line.
It's very easy as an actor, and we all do it, when one night you don't get a laugh in the same spot, or the laugh is different, or the reaction is different. And so you start to push. You start to beg the audience. You start to milk. Because you're addicted to that laugh. You're addicted to hearing what you heard the last night. And when it doesn't happen, you go, it must be me, or it must be them. Whatever you're thinking, you go, I'm gonna freaking get that laugh. If it's the last thing I do. And that's what will ruin you. And I can only say that as someone who has done it and still finds myself wanting to do that and occasionally doing it. If you always trust the material and you go back to the material, you'll kind of land in that. You'll land safely.
So just comparing and contrasting theater and film, you have the fortunate experience to say that you've been on a long-running show like Madam Secretary, and because of that, I assume that there's lots of relationships and bonding and things with the cast on the Madam Secretary that you wouldn't normally get with something that's short or as a day player or whatnot. Because even when you're rehearsing smaller roles on theater, you're still there with the cast, the larger cast, a lot of times for hours and hours and hours, and it's just not the same between the two mediums. So what for you, is it different when you're creating relationships and creating these bonds with the casts in theater versus TV shows, and then on the TV shows and the movies? How is it different between like single day shoots and multi-month shoots?
I've always thought as a set, a rehearsal room, whatever medium you're in, as an office. It's You go there every day the way a person would if they worked in insurance. It's the same thing. The act that you do is slightly different. One has maybe a little more creativity and weirdness, and one is a little more straight-laced, but there are days when that may be switched. I feel like I go into any rehearsal room or set, I go in with my bag of tricks set. That's what I train for. That's what I've worked on. That's what I've developed over my career. And then you go in and you play with that bag of tricks as much as you can. And then you look for opportunities to push that and try to get some new tricks, make yourself a little uncomfortable. But it's really all dependent on the people that you're surrounded with.
Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after this break. Welcome back to the episode.
I've been very, very lucky to have been surrounded by not only legends, but great, smart, working actors. Those are my favorite people. The best thing about Madam Secretary was we got to film here in New York City, and the cast was just filled with working actors who moved between different mediums. Tim Daly, Željko Ivanek, Patina Miller, Jeffrey Aaron, Sebastian Arcelus, Bebe Neuwirth, of course, all led by Téa Leoni, who has her stage fright is so intense that when she came to see Boop on opening night, she was so nervous. She literally was so nervous for me. The stage frightens her, but she was such an incredible, number one on the call sheet on the show. And there was never any drama on that set. We literally would sit around, we would do our scene, we'd say our lines, dark subjects sometimes. They would yell cut, and then we would laugh, and everyone would pull out the New York Times. We'd read the review of this play. We'd talk about, I want to go see that show. We want to go see it. It was just a bunch of actors hanging out, trying to make something great. We had the, real distinct kind of honor of being produced by Morgan Freeman and Laurie McCreary, and our producing director was Eric Stoltz. So these were all people who know from acting and know from both sides of the camera. Just very, very lucky. But I think it's all dependent on, there is no such thing as a one-person show, even when you're doing a one-person show. You are dependent on the people that you surround yourself with. It's hard work. It's really hard work. So you have to make the experience as pleasurable as possible. And you have to always remember that the thing is the thing, not you. The final product is the thing. I can't stand when people say, do this for you. I finally did this art for myself. I did this for me, or tonight, do this performance for you. No, there are people out there who some have paid $200 for tonight's ticket.
Or $900 if you're
there
a
are
fellow.
People who watch this show every week. They turn it on because this is what brings them joy. You're doing it for them. If you're doing it for you, then do it in your living room. We're not EMTs. We are entertainers, and we're artists, and we can save lives and we can change lives. But you've got to do it in a way that it communicates it to those who are watching, not for yourself. I'm a big believer that you have to do it for the audience. That's why we do this.
Well, speaking of one-person shows, it's now time for you to give me your one-person rendition of Plot in 60 Seconds. So what's going to happen is that you give me a number, 1 through 16, which corresponds to a list of popular musicals. And so depending on what number you give me, you will have chosen a musical that you then have to give me the plot for in 60 seconds or less.
I mean, I'm going to fail at this, but let's just go with number 5.
All right, number 5, 60 seconds up on the screen. Number 5 is Les Mis. Go.
60 seconds remaining.
A man steals a loaf of bread, and there's a officer who is determined to bring him to justice for doing so over the course of
45 seconds
many
remaining.
years. And this is all set against the backdrop of the student revolution of France. No,
Led by Russell Crowe?
Well, Russell Crowe
30
played the
seconds
officer,
remaining.
right?
Yeah,
In the film.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then there's a prostitute and a little boy named Gavroche, and I played Thénardier on the Les
15
Mis Junior
seconds
cast
remaining.
recording at MTI. So if you're doing it at your school, you're possibly hearing me at 16 play Thénardier.
5, 4.
I don't think that
3,
had anything to do with the
2,
plot, but I liked it.
1.
I don't.
like it.
I don't think you're right. I think I nailed it.
All right. Well, I'm gonna record this, send it to investors, and if they want to do a revival, then you've won.
Well, everything has to be stripped down these days to be successful on Broadway. So
Fair.
I think my new version of Les Mis, if it's just a man being chased by another man holding a loaf of bread,
Holding a loaf of bread,
three,
yeah.
3 hours,
But it's
and
got to
then
be a big
16-year-old Thénardier, we're good.
It's got to be a big French baguette, though. That's the whole thing.
That's right.
Yes. If it's a normal loaf, got to be a long
right.
French baguette. All right.
That's right.
3 standard closing questions to wrap up. The first one simply is just what motivates you.
Reaction, nailing a laugh.
Okay. What advice would you give to your younger self and younger people listening now, starting out down a similar path?
The advice that I would give to my younger self is keep going. You're right. I'm truly awful. The advice that I'd give to others, the worst thing that you can be is an uneducated actor. You have to know your history. Do not walk into an audition room or a rehearsal room having not watched all 100 movies on AFI's 100 greatest movies of all time. Do not do it. And try to do the same for plays and musicals. Know who came before you. Know how you got here. Don't be the person who said, "I love Don't Rain on My Parade" from Glee. You will sound like an idiot. Know where that song comes from. Know its background. Know who wrote it, and know the other songs they wrote. I think that education of an art form, whatever art form you are using, whatever art form you are in professionally, you should know in and out.
All right. Last question. If you could only see one show for the rest of your life, but you can see it as many times as you want, what would you see?
We're talking about Broadway show.
Any show you want.
Oh my God. Dance of the Vampires.
What is that?
Are you kidding me?
No, I'm not. Am I an uneducated podcast host?
Dance of the well, yeah, you're about to be fixed. Dance of the Vampires was a musical that came out in like 2003, I want to say. It was written by Jim Steinman, who wrote the score. Jim Steinman wrote Total Eclipse of the Heart, Holding Out for a Hero, many of those big epic pop songs of the 70s and 80s. A genius writer.
A musical adaptation of
it was a musical that existed in Germany, and in Germany it was taken very seriously. I think it's based off of an old film. And when they brought it to Broadway with people like Manny Gonzalez and Max von Essen, it became this techno rock pop opera show. And Michael Crawford starred in it. It was his return to Broadway after Phantom. And it became the campiest, craziest, weirdest musical you have ever seen. And Act 2 opened with Total Eclipse of the Heart. I was so obsessed with it. I saw it 8 times at the Marquee Theater. And you can watch it on YouTube, some illegal recording. It was the greatest thing I have ever seen. And I wish I could go back and see it every night.
I literally just found the full recording slime tutorial here on.
What does slime tutorial mean? I always see that.
It means bootleg, and so that you don't get flagged by devices looking for the word bootleg for infringement.
But how did it get to slime tutorial?
I couldn't tell you. At some point, someone just kept posting them and said, here's a slime tutorial. And then everyone just started calling it that. so I don't get flagged for promoting bootlegs, I call it a slime tutorial.
All right, well then Google the Dance of the Vampires slime tutorial.
Well, actually, in the title it says full Broadway full show 2002. So they didn't even try to hide this.
They've
one.
basically given up on that one.
Oh yeah. This
the unions
one,
are just saying, just take this.
Yes, it's only filmed in standard def though. Full warning. There's no HD. No HD pinhole camera in this one. This is like someone put a camcorder on their shoulder and nobody cared.
That's exactly right. Well, the best part about that show was that when you went to the theater, the ushers, I'm not kidding, they were wearing capes and fangs.
Yes. God, I want to go back in time and see this. Oh God, we need Alex Timbers to bring this back with his immersive thing. Okay, so then where can we find you online, social media? Where can we connect and see all the things?
I'm only on Instagram, Erich Bergen, ErichBergen, and come to Boop. We're on Broadway right now, unless you're listening to this in 2060, and then we're probably not on anymore. But wasn't the revival great? And then my this NBC special that I produced it airs on May 13th. It's called Joan Rivers, a Dead Funny All-Star Tribute. Incredible cast of people paying tribute to Joan, Nikki Glaser, Patton Oswalt, Tiffany Haddish. The list goes on and on. I was very, very proud to make it.
All the peeps. That is great. You can find me on Thread, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. Leave a rating and a review. Leave a comment if you can, wherever you're listening. Jukebox the Ghost gave us our intro and outro music, and Erich with a CH Bergen gave us our conversation. Thank you so much, man. This has been great.
Thank you.
Erich with a CH. Oh, wait. Now we got to say in Clint Eastwood, instead of cut, we're going to, all right, that's it.
All right, just stop.
Just stop.
Take a deep breath, make the world a little colorful.